Here we go. Welcome to the SharePoint Dev Weekly. It is episode 46. We are back from summer vacation. Well, partly, actually. Some of us are back from summer vacation. It is 5th of August, unless I'm completely mistaken. Yes, it is, because that's the day when I was supposed to get back from work. And Waldek is on vacation, so we got our season 1 finale visitor as a visitor for this week as well. But Erwin, you're actually on vacation, so you shouldn't be here, right?
I know. Actually, I started my vacation last week Thursday. So when you said that some of us came back from vacation, yeah, I'm not one of those. I still have a whole month to go.
Yeah, you just started your 4 weeks. In Sweden, you have 4 weeks of vacation, summer vacation as well, right?
Yeah. We have. Yeah, you get. I think you get like 20 or 25 days or something like that per year, something like that. Yeah.
And people use it on summertime because in Sweden
majority
it gets cold on winter time as well. Yeah, it's pretty soon Christmas, so or winter time again. So
winter is coming.
Yes. So before we go to the things, we had one slide which we wanted to talk about around the let's say the concentration areas in OneDrive SharePoint engineering. But before we go there, and then the articles, community articles, what's the latest from your side? You've been working for the past month, and anything interesting on the PMP side or community side of the house?
We're working actually pretty hard on the provisioning service. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, but you don't really see that. There's nothing exposed to the outside world, but there's quite some exciting things coming there that we will probably tell around, I think, Ignite time frame, most likely. So I can't dive too deep in that. PMP PowerShell just happily going forward. There's a couple of new commandlets built by Laura when it comes to actually cleaning up groups. So removing groups. That's quite nice. Majority of bug fixes there. Documentation updates. I don't know how it's possible, but we still make mistakes in the documentation. And there's actually one guy that he has the eyes of an hawk. He sees them all and fixes them all. It's amazing what he does there. And other than that, it's been relatively quiet last month. Other than that, I would say, vacation time. Scandinavia shuts down, and
for July, August, or yeah. Yeah. Well, so in local Finland, Microsoft, we had this simple rule that we have 4 weeks summer vacation, and you can keep the 4 weeks of summer vacation any time of the year as long as it's in July.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the rule in Finland. So because nothing happens in July in Finland because everybody is on vacation starting from midsummer or a week after that for 4 weeks. It's not true nowadays anymore, but it used to be quite true in the past because everybody has their summer house. So for the 1 month off and then heading to the summer places. So that's how it works. But in your case, actually, sorry for putting you on the spot on that one, you actually decided to move into your summer house. Wasn't that the case, right?
I did last year, indeed. Yeah. I moved away from Stockholm and moved into the summer house. It's not really a summer house because you can also live in the winter, actually. But
whatever summer house actually means, per se.
Exactly. Yeah, and this summer it will be a matter of painting the house, which is. Every time I mention painting to people are like, what are you going to do this vacation? I'm going to paint. And then they somehow imagine me sitting in a forest and then making painting. But no.
Why not? Why not?
No. It's painting the house. Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, we want to keep this relatively short. So we want to really let's say concentrate on keeping this less than 30 minutes. So let's actually move into the areas which we wanted to talk about because this will take a while as well. So let me share my screen from here. So one of the things what I wanted to talk about, because for Microsoft, this is kind of a new year. In Microsoft, our fiscal years works from the July until June. So now that I'm back from vacation in early August, that's basically the start of the year in Microsoft world. And obviously, as part of our objectives and everything else, we always kind of realign and refresh on what are we actually doing. Even though in our case, actually, we've been pushing this story for past year as well. But what I wanted to do here is kind of raise 5 points, which we should talk about together with Erwin, as the main areas where we are focusing on the OneDrive and SharePoint engineering in the context of extensibility and development. So really the areas where, if you're a partner or a customer, these are the things where we're investing. If it's anything else what you're looking into, maybe you want to double check is your model the right and the usage patterns right for SharePoint. Well, not precisely. That sounded almost too harsh, but still, let's talk about the 5 main areas in OneDrive, SharePoint, and sharing, which we're currently concentrating. So first of all, there should be no massive surprises here. So modern portals, absolutely a big thing for us. So making sure that people see the modern SharePoint and modern portals communication sites as the de facto way of doing corporate intranets rather than still building classic publishing sites. Please don't do that. That's not a sustainable model. That's not a long-term sustainable model where you want to invest, because that model is when did we introduce that? 2010, classic publishing, something like that.
Yeah, it was 2010, I think.
That's 10 years ago. So sure, it has served us insanely well, but it's not as sustainable in the long run. And we really want people to move into the communication sites. And sure, if there's any gaps, if there's still any gaps over there, we need to address those. And we're addressing a lot of these gaps all the time. So adding missing capabilities, scheduling capabilities, or other capabilities on the platform, and improving that all the time. But that's really the area where we're having.
Yeah.
We're providing more.
Basically, the story I always say is that if you can create a new site, it should be by default a modern site. Don't even consider going for classic. And as you said, there are gaps maybe, but be creative. Think out of the box. Don't think of the classic functionality that you were given. There's actually other ways to pull off this functionality in modern sites, but you just have to approach it in a different way. And I say 99% of the cases, there is actually no reason to go for classic sites. There is actually no reason for that. Go for modern. Yep.
And one of the things was said about the functionality, I wouldn't even concentrate, sorry for tackling on this on our wording, but really they wouldn't even concentrate on functionality, rather on the requirement. Because
absolutely good point.
That's really the main point. If people concentrate on the classic did X and Y and Z, we need to do X and Y and Z, you're actually thinking this in the wrong way. You should be looking into, why did we did this in the past? Is this still something which we want to invest in the future? Is this something what it has to do? Why? What is the root cause of this functionality? Oh, we can actually implement this using Microsoft Teams or whatever. So that's really the right way of thinking this.
Because I'm exactly what you say. I'm almost 100% sure that in the original requirements that were used to, for instance, create a publishing site, no one stated that they wanted a classic publishing site.
That is so true. Yes, probably. That is so true. Yes. Well, that never should have been actually as a requirement. The requirement is something we want to have a corporate intranet, and we want to the corporate intranet needs to do following things, and that's going to be de facto landing page and all of that stuff. So, really, really important things. Now, let's move on to the second topic, which is kind of understanding as well. If you are a Microsoft partner, you know how heavily, or a customer, when you know how heavily we're pushing Microsoft Teams, and which is it is I wouldn't say anymore it's a new kid on the block, but it's really the thing which we push heavily from the Microsoft 365 side right now. And the SharePoint and OneDrive has a massive role on the Microsoft Teams as well, because they enable a lot of the capabilities which you can use together with Microsoft Teams. Sure, if you're a small company, maybe the chatting in Microsoft Teams is good enough. But if you want to have a corporate announcements, simple list solutions or library solutions, you can easily do that using Microsoft Teams and together with SharePoint. And behind of Microsoft Teams, there's actually always a SharePoint site. There's always SharePoint group site or modern team site, which is used for storing the files and assets which are actually uploading to Microsoft Teams.
SharePoint is a very foundational layer behind Teams, effectively.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like I said, more and more we see then solutions where we take the modern portals and integrate that and exposing that through Microsoft Teams as the announcements or the corporate news channel. Because why would we implement something completely custom? Because you already have invested in Microsoft 365, and then you have the news capabilities using SharePoint. So as an example. Now, moving on from a more slightly more on the development side of the things, which is because this is SharePoint Dev Weekly. So obviously, really important thing to realize, the Microsoft Graph API coverage is definitely the number one thing where we're investing. So anything new, what we're introducing, is designed to be used through Microsoft Graph APIs. So more and more we see functionalities which are not even exposed through the classic, let's say, CSAM or the classic REST API endpoint, rather through Microsoft Graph API.
Is Classic dead?
Classic is not dead. So one of the things, also, which we cannot and will not do is that we would actually just drop all of the Classic APIs. And for example, the CSAM, we are still working on the .NET Core version of CSAM. As an example, the PowerShell, the SharePoint Online PowerShell, the native PowerShell, and also the PnP PowerShell is using CSAM and REST APIs behind the scenes through there's authentication implications, there's authorization implications, and all of that. So. But Graph is still the area where we are investing in the future because we want to think the Graph as the unified API across Microsoft 365, not just an isolated API set for SharePoint or for OneDrive.
So if things happen on the API level, it happens at the Graph.
Yes, that is true. Yes, and obviously if something is missing and it's in a Classic, please keep on asking those things. We need to understand what are the gaps, so we are able to implement and address those gaps in the Microsoft Graph side. Now, then the number 4 thing is Microsoft Flow and Power Apps integration improvements. So this is an area where I think even I've heard about this one quite a few times. So there's a lot of people, at least there used to be a lot of people who are coming from a SharePoint on-prem to the SharePoint Online, and they think that Microsoft Flow is part of SharePoint. No, it's not. It's a completely separate set of services and functionalities, but it's quite often surfaced in the context of SharePoint when you use the Flow to be your macro service for automating list operations or file operations in a SharePoint or OneDrive, because that's what the Flow is really great on.
So, sorry, but Flow, you hear a lot about licensing. Is there any? Anything you can share about that?
Well, obviously, I'm from a OneDrive SharePoint engineering side, so answer is no, I can't. The Microsoft Flow and Power Apps, the licensing model is owned by the Microsoft Flow and Power Apps people, and it's better me not to comment anything related on the licensing discussion. I think really recently, just to pinpoint this one though, recently is it Inspire? Was the partner conference?
Yes.
There was a new licensing structure introduced. What does it mean in practice? I don't know. So somebody needs from the right organizations will need to answer on that question. But fair question. Microsoft Flow and Power Apps are not necessarily part of your E3 agreement. Some of the capabilities are, some are not. And then you need to clarify what is the potential licensing impact and cost impact. If you're using those. So. And now the 5th one here is then further extend the SharePoint framework usage as the de facto UX dev model for 365. And this is really around the fact that the SharePoint framework has been highly successful. I think in the SharePoint conference, it was late May, we said that it grew 373% year over year. Obviously, it's and the numbers are really huge. I can't just say that it's the from the big cake of all extensibility for the UX level, SPFX is massive. I can't even say the percentage because some people might don't want me to actually say all of the facts out loud, which is understandable, by the way. But basically, because SharePoint Framework, we've proven that the community loves SharePoint Framework, partners love SharePoint Framework, customers like the fact that what it can do. We will keep on further investing on that one, and it's then extending. It's already the platform which you used if you create Microsoft Teams tabs. You can really easily do those using SharePoint framework. We're extending the Office add-in model. We talked about this one in the past. And then also we're looking into potentially renaming the framework that is still being discussed, which is a marketing decision, obviously. So that all of that discussion is now ongoing, and I can imagine that by the time of Ignite, there will be definitely much more new news around all of this discussion and what do we do with SharePoint framework in future.
Yeah. So it's the cool. What I like about this little bullet point you have here is that you don't mention necessarily SharePoint as a de facto dev model for SharePoint. No, it's much broader now.
Yes.
So all the investments you've been doing as a developer into learning the framework is actually paying back immediately because you can use it now suddenly throughout the whole spectrum of offerings. It's
absolutely.
Really good.
And then using the SharePoint framework or whatever we will call that in future, Erwin framework.
Let's not do that.
For calling Microsoft Graph APIs and exposing data, or calling your custom web APIs in Azure and then exposing your business data in SharePoint Online or in Microsoft Teams, just as well. I think that the story is really good, and we are definitely seeing that paying off. And there is progress in the store story as well. I can't give you any timelines. Anybody in this call to any timeline? Oh, in this call. This is not a call. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly. But no timelines on the store story, but it is actually progressing. So pretty soon, anybody can actually submit their SharePoint framework solutions to be then hosted in store.
That's amazing.
And that opens up a completely new set of opportunities for bigger ISVs and the mid-sized ISVs, and why not for a smaller group of people? So if you're really good on writing cool-looking web parts, and then you want to expose or sell those or expose them for free as an option for customers and partners, that will be possible. So That's really, really cool.
Cool.
Good. Let me actually move then to the community articles. This is definitely not going to be 30 minutes, by the way. But on the articles, we want to be relatively small. I will add links on the blog post, so you can actually then have a more detailed look on what's happening there. Now, on the SharePoint developer community YouTube side of this story, I just want to pinpoint the fact that during the summertime, we released this Getting Started with SharePoint and Office 365 development series, and we actually released a new video in every single day, almost. I think 18 videos in 4 weeks. That's 18 videos in 20 days. That's quite a nice set of numbers. There will be more videos in future. Some of these have been already watched for more than 1,000 times, 1,200 and so on. So quite a nice set of numbers on views, and clearly there's a demand for this kind of a getting started capabilities, which is understandable, by the way, because we quite often forget about, when we're talking to somebody like Erwin, we forget about that the majority of people are not as smart as Erwin. Erwin is one of the smartest or something. But having the getting started capabilities recorded helps people to catch on new capabilities rather than being advanced all the time.
The cool thing about these videos too, if I may jump in here, the cool thing about this, they don't take an hour for you to watch. They're very short. Yes. They're very short. It's like just a few minutes. You can watch it on the bus or on the subway or, well, I was about to say in the car, but don't do that. Unless
you are a passenger.
Yeah, exactly. If you have your driver drive you to the office, then you could watch them. But they're very short. They're very easy, and the few ones are like, okay, there's one that's of course is yours.
Yeah, exactly.
16 minutes, but the majority of them are actually less than 10 minutes.
That's true. That is true. Anyway, and one thing what I wanted to actually talk about here, we're talking about the fact that, and I want to get feedback on this one. If somebody is watching this, response on the Twitter or Facebook or in LinkedIn around this, whatever channels you're reading, watching this. We were kind of planning that, is there value for having a community playlist in this YouTube channel as well? And the playlist would actually work in a way that if you have existing videos in YouTube, you would be able to submit those to us, and then we'll add it to the playlist. So people would be able to then see the latest YouTube videos from your YouTube channel, through this channel as well, which hopefully then will increase your subscribers into your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
If that's a good idea, and if there's a demand for that one, please let us know, and we'll figure it out what it actually means internally in our side.
If you look at the number of subscribers that the PNP channel has here, it's 11,290. So basically, if we would share a community video on a playlist here, you're basically pushing it out to 290 subscribers immediately, which is an interesting number to share with. Yeah.
That's true. That is true. And the views are, by the way, growing all the time as well. So it's good to see that, especially the Getting Started video series really helped again on boosting the views. So people are clearly interested on what's actually happening in the channel. Now, but we would definitely want to make the channel more approachable for everybody in the community as well. Now, a few new samples which I wanted to pinpoint from Chario Mendes. So React Directory web part sample. We'll let the links obviously on the blog post. Quite cool. It's a web part which works inside of the SharePoint or in the Microsoft Teams side as well. It's basically a search directory, so people search functionality. So you're able to search a person, and then based on the whatever you're searching, you're getting shown the persons and you get the details and all of that. What's kind of interesting and debatable about this sample, just to pinpoint that one as well, that this control here is actually out-of-the-box control. So the Chario basically reverse engineered how the out-of-the-box web parts are using this out-of-the-box control, and then is using this control in his web part. But we haven't actually documented that API and the interface. So it might be that at some point this web part does not work until it's getting updated on the right React version or UI Fabric version and all of that. So that's really the challenge around this kind of implementation. It's a really cool implementation, uses out-of-the-box functionalities, and it's a good reminder for me to actually trying to figure out internally, can we expose that control as a first party for you to use easily in your web part?
It would make sense if you think about it. It's a very useful control.
Now, but if we do that, then that's really why won't you do that? Well, yes, but if we do that, then there's an implications out of it. Then we need to release that as an individual thing. We need to version that as an individual thing. We need to release the different versions out of it when we're using a different or enhanced version internally, which will have to be using a different React versions and all of that. So it has an engineering impact. Now, now, when it's part of the same set of code, we don't need to worry about the versioning and release cycles and all of that. So that's why it's not actually released, at least yet, as in supported API or supported control. Good. What else? From Chario Mendes as well, React Birthday web part. This is relatively old web part, but he improved this during summertime. It's actually quite cool. It is a quite typical requirement for customers to ask. I want to have a web part which is showing those people who are having a birthday today in the front page of our web of our portal or whatever. So it's using the Azure AD birthday information, and then you can control how it's being rendered. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Simple, but really efficient.
And it gets this from the graph.
Yeah.
I assume.
Yeah. Yep. It is a graph. If I remember correctly, we can quickly double check that one. Just it doesn't take too long. Package solution, and we can see that it is actually getting that to the graph. So that's okay. Now, moving on articles, installing SharePoint framework field customizer on an existing list column. So this is around associating an SPFX extension, not through the solution, which we do by default. Rather, if you have an existing column already deployed, how do you associate this extensibility to that existing column on the existing lists? And funny enough, good that we have the father of the BMP PowerShell in place, because we are using BMP PowerShell and to make that happen. So I'm sure you would be able to do this using CSM or REST API as well, but PNP PowerShell is definitely the easiest way to do that. So no doubt. Cool. It really is around the client-side component ID for the field, and as long as the extension is available in the context, poof, it will just magically work. Yep. Now, this one was really cool from
Hugo Bernier.
Thank you. So would you like to create a low fidelity SharePoint wireframes in PowerPoint? So this is a really cool PowerPoint presentation, which then has a basically different kind of layouts and pictures, which you can use for having a discussion with your customers around what kind of designs you want to use and what kind of web parts you want to have on the landing page of the portal and all of that.
And you don't need to install a separate tool for mockups. You can just use
PowerPoint. It's just PowerPoint. I'm a PowerPoint guy rather than VCO guy, so kind of makes sense. Definitely. One thing for Hugo, pinpoint. So right now, if you go all the way down here, you're going to actually download the PowerPoint template. If you click that one, it is a broken file. So want to double check this one. It is pointing to the OneDrive, so there's something wrong around those links, but definitely I'm pretty sure that Hugo will fix the links immediately when he knows about those. I will let him know through Twitter. This one was from Tommy, around 10 things you should do with your Office 365 demo or dev tenant. So basically, you got the tenant. What do I need? What should I now do with it to be able to easily concentrate on doing development on this tenant? Or how do I get the tenant? And then what are the steps on auto create some users and what are the samples which I could be using? And all that.
Because if you apply for one of these tenants, they're like vanilla tenants.
Yes, they're pretty clean. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And as an example, just pinpointing this one as well here, provisioning service, you can easily get example site collections and content available over there. Really cool stuff, which is then showing what's possible in the SharePoint Online using the modern capabilities.
Yep.
Now, building my first library component using SharePoint Framework. This one was from Jenkins. Basically, how to use library components. Library component went to GA in SharePoint Framework 1.9. Which, unfortunately, we actually pulled. So there was a problem with the 1.9 related on online Workbench. Was it on-prem Workbench? Either way, on Workbench. And then basically we decided that maybe it's easier and more cost efficient. It's clearer to actually pull it and then release 1.9.1, which is meant to go live during this week. Hopefully we get it out during this week, unless there's any late surprises on that. This week meaning it is 5th of August, so hopefully this week 1.9.1 goes out and then the library component is back again available for everybody to use. Kind of related on that one from Jonas Bjerke, a few tips on building your SPFX library component, also promoting that 1.9 went live and then it didn't.
No.
Hey, these things do happen, unfortunately.
So for now, if you don't want to wait until later this week, when 1.9.1 comes out, you have to stick with the 1.8 beta.
Yes, 1.8.2 beta would be the one, and then test around the things. But 1.9.1 is coming quite soon, as fast as we can. So that should be out really soon. And then we'll learn from these mistakes, and then we'll improve our validation processes and everything else, and proper sign-offs before we actually get stuff out. And this one was already in queue. SPFX web parts from different solutions on the same local Workbench. So if I have multiple solutions and I want to test something in my local Workbench, how would I actually do that? Solution is actually quite simple from Joel. It's basically copy the stuff from the distant lib folders to the other solution. And then when you run your solution, you will actually see the multiple ones in available. So one way of improving the local experience if that's needed. So kind of makes sense. This one is from Julie. Tip React.js fragments streamlined your DOM. So this is something related on React 16.2 and 16.0 changes. So before 16.0, there always had to be a root tag, which is getting returned by a React component, and then resulted in loop multiple diffs, as an example in this case. But in 16 forward, you can actually return fragments which are not with the root tag. And that's a quite significant change, actually, because that has...
Notice the square brackets around it. So she actually is returning an array there.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. That is true. Really, really cool.
Yep.
And then there's the fragments. So basically fragments over there. So, but really cool stuff. So that's 16.2 having the fragments. So cool stuff to actually have a look on. React is the model React is the one which we use internally for SharePoint framework implementation as well. But which is probably the best framework if you're now trying to figure out your framework. We do support Angular, Vue, whatever, as the platform as well, but they're not necessarily as optimal for SharePoint framework development as React. So, two more. How to pass parameters to SPF extension by creating a web part UI interface. Complex title, but it's basically how would I have a user interface and then add dynamically extension to a list based on the user interface. And it's a story around creating a web part, and then the web part is adding actually the extension to the site based on the values which a user is giving. So nice blog post. And here we can see that it's basically, again, it's client-side component ID in the user custom actions collection in the web, which we're actually modifying. And this one is using digests and everything else. So it's, again, the actual implementations is debatable, but the whole key point here is that you can always add, as long as you have permissions, you can add additional user custom action items in the collection of the web or site, and then using the client-side component ID, you define what is the extension which is getting executed in that context, and poof, stuff is working. And then the final article, a lot of articles, not going to deep dive on this one as well, but Corey Roth, how to provision lookup columns and projected fields using PnP PowerShell. It's basically a story around how do I automate lookup column creation with projected fields in SharePoint Online. So if you need to provision something automatically to multiple sites, how would you actually do that? And he's using PnP PowerShell for that one because it's the easiest way probably to manipulate existing sites in SharePoint Online. Cool stuff, really cool stuff as well. It's a classic requirement. So
yep.
It's good to know that they actually work. So
indeed, but there's also, when you look through the blog post, it's also, you said it's a classic requirement. It's also a bit of classic work because he's actually working his way through the camel XML.
Yes, it is the camel XML. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Really classic, old school way of doing stuff. Now, let me actually stop sharing. And that's a relatively long discussion. Well, not a super long, but 30 minutes or something like that. Any last words from your side? You have a really classic PnP shirt on you.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's not. Okay, it's the old logo still. Yeah. No, have a great summer. Well, I can say that for me. Have a great summer. And
have a great summer, Erwin.
Thank you.
Summer vacation.
Yeah.
Get your house painted. So it's all downhill for me from this moment onward, from this day onwards, right? No, it's not. No, it's not actually. It's good to be back as well. Great to be able to. And it's good to have some time off that you're able to think through the things which are important and then get back to work on really working on those. So super excited. And really looking forward on all of the things what we have queued up for this autumn, stuff getting announced in Ignite, and then the further plans behind of that. Really looking forward. The extensibility model and dev model looks really good in Microsoft 365. So let's see if we'll need to change our PnP name from a SharePoint OneDrive.
Interesting.
Back to that original naming, by the way, because maybe somebody remembered that, but we were originally Office 365 developer patterns and practices. So
yeah, indeed.
And then it got confused, and then confusing, and then whatever. So I'm trying to work on the clarity on the messaging, because when I think of it around this topic, Microsoft 365 is the thing. If we use SharePoint framework or whatever it will be called to do customizations also for Microsoft Teams, why would we call this community model as SharePoint PnP? So let's see where we will end up. So interesting times.
Yep, indeed.
But I think that's it probably from this one. So thank you everybody for watching or listening, depending on your chosen model. Which reminded me, I need to figure out how do we release this also as a podcast sooner or later, which would be a good thing to do. I'll try to figure that one out as well. But thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Erwin, for joining me on the season 2 start. I can't remember what was the cliffhanger from season 1.
I don't remember anymore. No, sorry.
Yeah. I need to go back on but we'll continue from this. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.